We are bringing up our next speaker is Kendrick. Yes, whoop whoop. She is a mom to 4 girls, nutritional therapy practitioner, and a motivational speaker. And I do believe she's very motivational. She just gave me a pep talk in the hallway a little while ago. Anyway, she's a motivational speaker writing about paleo nutrition, lifestyle, personal growth, and empowerment on primalbalance.com. Primal-balance.com. She also hosts the show Born Primal Conversations with the Ancestral Health Community. Please welcome to the stage, Kendall.
Hi. So my story begins 4 years ago with me laying in a hospital bed dying. A series of events led to that life-changing event in that night, and ultimately what happened is that I had spent my life trying to control outcomes and living in the need to be the best at everything that I did until it nearly cost me my life. 11 weeks before that night, I was told that my pregnancy was not viable. It wasn't a miscarriage caused by a fluke. Stress and hormone imbalance played a very, very large role in that miscarriage. My emotional stress was because I didn't have control over the 3 daughters that I shared custody with my ex-husband, and I spent every day fighting him for that control. The hormone imbalance was caused by being vegan the year before, just one of the many examples of me being extreme in my life to prove a point. So, for 3 hours, my life slipped away from me. Thankfully, I'm a fighter, and I hung on until I couldn't anymore. The words came out of my mouth without even feeling like I was speaking to my husband. I have to go now. Then I slipped into darkness and machines beeped around me. I came to with a lot of people working on me. There was a transfusion in my arm. I was shivering. The OB had come in at that point, was prepping me for surgery. And ultimately, the neglect did belong to the hospital. It didn't have to happen. It didn't need to be that dire. But I am so thankful for that experience because it gave me the second chance that I have not taken for granted since. The changes in my life did not happen overnight. I did not come into this world with a picture-perfect childhood. I don't think many people do. Trauma and abandonment were my experiences, and they ruled my existence for a very long time. I was trapped as a victim of circumstance. But, you know, even people who have what seems like the perfect childhood to those of us who didn't, we all still need tools to survive in this evolutionary mismatch world that we live in. My own process to evolve and stop fighting everything that comes my way has been an arduous one, but more rewarding than I ever expected. We all create coping mechanisms at some point in our lives. So my first attempt to control pain in my life was in the 6th grade. It was the year after my parents divorced, and I moved to a new state with my mom. It was a small town in Georgia, and I was bullied for sounding different than my classmates, bullied for being what they called ugly, for having crooked teeth, for not wearing name brand clothes, because for most of my life, my mother had either made my clothes or bought them from thrift stores. I had moved from a place where I was very accepted by other kids whose families were in the same blue-collar tax bracket as us. I now had a new stepfather, 2 new stepsisters that I didn't know, a school full of rich kids that hated me, and I lived 500 miles away from everyone I'd ever loved and relied on. I was 10 years old. The shock to my system was more than I could bear, so I developed a way subconsciously that I could find some control in my life. I stopped eating. It began as a fear of choking after seeing a horror movie at a sleepover, then studying the Heimlich maneuver in science class. I was already a really skinny, sick kid because I had a lot of allergies, corn and dairy, and in the 1980s, there weren't alternatives like there are to now, and pretty much everything that I ate came out of a box anyway, so very, very unhealthy. So as the weeks of me not eating progressed, it was pretty evident to my parents that, you know, I was getting skinnier and not eating and really kind of falling apart. You know, I have always been very resilient. That's the thing about me, and I think that's probably when my resiliency began. And after a few months of this disordered eating, I just decided that I was going to eat again. So I just ate. But over the years, I found a lot of new coping mechanisms to replace each other, and they were always unhealthy ones. The one trait that I picked up on at some point in my young life was perfectionism. I never even thought of myself as a perfectionist until I stopped trying to be one. So the root of my perfectionism has always stemmed from feeling unlovable and unworthy. I made things that I experienced as a child mean so much that as I grew up physically, emotionally, I was still a trapped little girl stuck as a victim of circumstance. If I was just a better person, if I was just prettier or smarter or something completely irrelevant, those who abandoned me would love me and accept me. This is how some part of my subconscious mentality operated daily for over 20 years. One of the more recent ways that I've used my perfectionism in the not-too-distant past was to convince everyone around me how busy I was. Having 4 kids, working in food policy, running my voiceover company, managing the blog and podcast, studying nutrition, traveling, it all became this guise. I wanted to feel like I'd achieved something, and I wanted to be accepted. I'd never known that I could just accept who I was and be good with whatever came my way. I thought you had to prove your worth for acceptance. But what happens when you grow up in a pile of shame is that you don't learn that you have value. So you could be the president of the United States, and you would never be good enough. I thought that being a professional ballet dancer like I dreamed of would make those who were supposed to love me as a child but weren't capable finally come around. Then I got an injury at 16 years old, and that ended my dance career before it even started. So then when I got a gig as a DJ at 17 years old, and within a couple of years became a local celebrity, I was sure this time would be it. I stayed in a career I hated for 16 years because I wanted to feel important and special to anyone around me who I thought might see me that way. The problem was that I loathed who I was. At 19, the newfound popularity was too overwhelming. My next coping mechanism was the most destructive by far. I became a drug addict. Once again, that resiliency took over, and my desire to live just happened to be slightly more than my desire to die, even though there were so many moments that I wanted to leave it all. At 21, I got clean, and I moved on with my life, and that is when the real work began. I was still finding ways to cope, equally damaging, just not mind-altering. The journey of me finding myself and learning to love who I am began 16 years ago. I've gone down every road imaginable to seek peace. In the early days, I sought spiritual growth. But I found it was harder for me when I was putting responsibility elsewhere. So as the layers of onion peeled away over the years, I would beat myself up for thinking, but I already dealt with this. Why is it coming back up? Finally, I've accepted that some things will never be dealt with, and they will always rear their head. There's no destination to arrive at, and that's okay, because now in my life, every single thing is a learning opportunity to not be perfect. It's mind-blowing to go down the rabbit hole of perfectionism. Once you see it and understand it, it's like everywhere, and you realize every day that there's this fight against perfectionism. A couple of years ago, I was doing this specific type of therapy, and I was beating myself up because I just wasn't getting it, and my therapist said, I think maybe you're trying to be a perfectionist about not being a perfectionist. It was an aha moment and the clue that I needed. So for a long time, I envied those who could just go with the flow. I've always been one to catastrophize everything. The smallest thing was the biggest disaster. I've never had a peaceful existence when I lived in that way. The dog is sick. My kid is having a tantrum. My car won't start. Everything induced panic right here in my chest. It seemed like the end of the world. I spent my life living in sympathetic fight or flight mode, and I didn't ever just stop to think in situations and see what was going on. I just reacted to everything emotionally. Logic had no role in any of my decision-making processes. So my first goal was just to chill out when it came to responding to everything and anything. And this was the hardest thing for me to do. It just wasn't natural to my nervous system. Through my journey of finding the true me that I so desired to become, I started learning how to blend logic and emotion to make wise-minded decisions. Instead of making a choice based on how I felt, I started weighing out the facts, looking at things logically, which means no judgments, no emotions, no opinions, no assumptions, no mind reading, focusing on the long-term consequences. Then taking the emotions and looking at those separately. So you need both sides to make a wise decision, but you have to step back and see things for what they are. And you have to focus on increasing your awareness. Slow down. Become aware of whatever experience you're having and let it flow in and out like waves, not holding on to any of it. Just noticing what you see and what you feel. And then realize that thoughts are just thoughts. Feelings are just feelings. You don't need to take action on those. It takes practice to be prepared when the Sharknado of emotional mind comes roaring in. It's that thing that overwhelms your nervous system that maybe is obsessive, or the thing that happens when you lose control and makes you react before you've had time to process what's happening. The ability to slow down and observe events as they were happening to me and around me allowed me to start seeing perfectionist patterns within myself. Perfectionism is very tied to being black and white. Perfectionism in psychology is a personality trait characterized by a person striving for flawlessness and setting excessively high performance standards, accompanied by overly critical self-evaluations and concerns regarding others' evaluations. It is best conceptualized as a multidimensional characteristic, as psychologists agree that there are many positive and negative aspects. In its maladaptive form, perfectionism drives people to attempt to achieve an unattainable ideal. And their adaptive perfectionism can sometimes motivate them to reach their goals. In the end, they derive pleasure from doing so. But here's this part. When perfectionists do not reach their goals, they often fall into depression. You can't be a perfectionist and live in the gray, because the pendulum has to swing one way or the other to attain those goals. There's no in-between or going with the flow. It requires great control to manage all that you're trying to be perfect at. There's no acceptance that you are where you are, and it's okay to be there. People will argue that there are benefits to perfectionism because you're striving to be better. But being better and being perfect are two completely different goals. What does perfectionism have to do with paleo? Everything. How many of you came into this diet and lifestyle and felt like you were born again? Maybe you told everybody who would listen, your hairdresser, your mom, the checkout girl at Trader Joe's, that you had found the way. You threw every grain, legume, and Butterfinger out of your pantry. It definitely was that way for me. I bought Vibrams, I started swinging kettlebells, I stopped washing my hair, I started doing the no poo method, I started a blog, because you know what? Telling everybody in public and in person is not enough. You have to take it to the interwebs. Even my blog name, Primal Balance, was born out of my need to balance my life. Early on in those paleo days, I worked so hard to be perfect at this diet stuff that I exhausted myself. I stayed up until all hours of the night preparing food for the next day for my family of 6. I mean, it was an exciting experience, but it also fed my all-or-nothing behaviors that represent the shame cycle for me. Perfectionism breeds shame. That's actually what the bottom of that slide says, but it's not showing up there. So just pretend that shame is on the bottom of that, okay? Perfectionism breeds blank. Just insert whatever you'd like. It's a lose-lose situation. So while many perfectionists achieve goals, I mean, we're very goal-oriented, right? Type A, hello. They miss out on positive experiences all around them because of that distraction and that focus. It's so consuming to be a winner. The go with the flow mentality isn't possible for being perfect. Then, when you fail, the feelings of not being good enough, of not being worthy, of not succeeding take over. That's shame. And when you're in shame, the cycle tends to lead to impulsive behavior because the shame feels so bad. Now, I don't want you to mistake shame for guilt. Shame comes from an old place inside of us. Maybe it's related to trauma at some point, but it can happen for any reason. So guilt is actually a healthy emotion. It guides us to make more positive choices and to make repairs and to move on. So how many times have you done a Whole30, a 21-day sugar detox, you get so many days in and you fall off the wagon? Yes. Did you beat yourself up? Did you say, forget it, and decide you've already fallen off, you're gonna go hit a pint of Ben & Jerry's? Okay, that's shame. So that's impulsive behavior. That's the part that says you failed, you're not good enough, you don't deserve to feel and look the way that you want to. On the other hand, if you fell off but you got back on, you might have experienced some guilt, but shame didn't have a role in that experience. Perfectionism has no sustainability, especially when it comes to dieting. It's one of the reasons that the paleo world touts the idea of 80-20. We need gray room to stretch our wings from rigidness. So your idea of that 80 or even 20% will look different. I think that this is a template of an idea of eating versus a fixed diet. We have the main components that we know will improve our health, our performance, our emotions, and much more if we follow those lines for many of us. But maybe you can eat more Neolithic foods like dairy, white potatoes when someone else can't tolerate them. One of my biggest complaints with the paleo primal community right now is the need for judgment about treats. It's such an issue that there's a panel on it here at PFX. So here's how I see it. There's two very clear sides. There's the, hey, use them in moderation. Second is, they're the devil and you're a paleo failure if you consume them. I don't see any bloggers saying you should consume almond flour brownies every waking moment, even if that's the majority of what they publish on their website. They're not shoving them down your throat. And I know some of them are in here, so I know that they're not doing that. So what has happened to responsibility for our own actions? I've never been against treats. I think they have a place in the gray, but I feel that way about dairy or rice or white potatoes as well. As a nutritional therapy practitioner, I want people to experiment and make those decisions for themselves. And I'd love to see the judgments of others kept to a minimum or disappear altogether. A long time ago, a friend of mine gave me some very sage advice. She compared life to yoga. Our yoga instructor would say, when you're in here, you stay on your mat. You don't compare your practice to anyone else in the room. It belongs to you. The way you eat is your journey. And if you're living your life with integrity and acceptance about who you are, then let go of what others think. This is your practice. There is a beautiful movement taking place in this community, and it's being led by men and women who want others to know that it's okay to love your body no matter what it looks like. Molly Galbraith of Girls Gone Strong recently challenged us to a 28-day Love Your Body challenge and inspired women to post any flaws on their body that they were learning to love. Photographs of cellulite and thighs and wrinkly bellies were filled on Facebook. Women have never been so proud to show off body parts they'd spent years hating. Stacey Toth of Paleo Parents has dealt with judgment about her weight as long as she's been blogging. She finally decided that she just wants to be strong and started sharing her strong woman experience and with the world. These and others inspire me to continue to empower women that we can love ourselves and not strive to be some idea of perfect that isn't even realistic. When I came into the paleo world, the strong is the new skinny memes ruled social media. What's your excuse? So mine was that I had 2 newborn twins and a 2-year-old, and my excuse was that I was tired and covered in milk and baby throw up, and all I could manage was getting to the grocery store and a shower if I was lucky. I had a very model-type body until I began having children, so I'd never known the concept of hating your body. 4 babies later, that all changed, and ever since, I've struggled a lot with body issues, and it took me a long time to feel comfortable in my skin. This is what I looked like after I gave birth to twins. Little Shar-Pei puppy. Just last week, Stephanie Ruper, the founder of Paleo for Women and author of Sexy by Nature, wrote an article dispelling the myth that strong is the new skinny is better than skinny is the new skinny. So what about those of us who aren't physically strong? I haven't run an unbroken mile in my life, and remember that article about female Marines not being able to do 3 pull-ups? Good luck getting me to do 1. I tried CrossFit for a year because I wanted to be like all the cool paleo kids. It was defeating to me. In that environment, it's supposed to be all about your own personal record, which is super cool, except at some point, coming in last every workout and never RXing can even beat down the girl who spends every day trying not to be perfect. So I let it go, and I found something that I could feel good about. Now I just lift weights by myself with my music and my thoughts. It's freedom for me, and I don't feel like I'm in a competition with anyone. I go as hard or light as the mood strikes me, and I don't attempt to do anything beyond my means. And I'm okay if I still look like that. I love the idea of strong. I want to physically be strong, but I want to be my own version of strong. In Stephanie's article, she proposed the idea that love is the new skinny. I agree with her because I believe that love always wins, especially when we love ourselves. While magazines and stores still taunt us with airbrushed photos giving an unrealistic account of beauty, companies and celebs are coming out to change that paradigm. Dove, the soap company, began the campaign for Real Beauty in 2004, featuring commercials with women of all sizes, ethnicities, and shapes in underwear. According to their website, their mission is, at Dove, our vision is of a world where beauty is a source of confidence and not anxiety. So we are on a mission to help the next generation of women develop a positive relationship with the way they look, helping them raise their self-esteem and realize their full potential. Aren't they beautiful? The 17-year-old pop star from New Zealand, Lorde, tweeted an edited photo recently saying, I find this curious. 2 photos from today. 1 edited, so my skin is perfect, and 1 real. Remember, flaws are okay. Flaws are more than okay. Flaws are our trophies. They are the very thing that makes us human. We can no longer let the media or others tell us what we should be. The only way out of hell is acceptance. In this moment, I want you to accept who you are. Accept where you are in your journey. Slow down. Observe your body inside and out. What places need love from you? Is it your hips? Is it your belly? Is it your autoimmune disease that won't heal no matter how hard you paleo? Maybe it's the voice in your head that says you're not worthy of being who you desire to be or who you desire to be with. I want you to send love to those places where shame lives, and I want you to let the shame out because it cannot exist in the light. You are beautiful and brave, and if you are here today, you are a survivor. Celebrate your imperfections. Thank you.
Any questions? Is there any questions? Okay, I'm seeing tears. Wow. Nobody has any questions? I'm really surprised. Wow. Okay, hold on.
So, what are some methods that you've learned so that you're not as perfect? How to deal with, the shame and, like what are the kind of methods you learned?
So slowing down is a big factor for me. Meditation has been huge in my life, even if I'm not super great about practicing it regularly. I don't let myself have shame about that. I think mostly it's just about acceptance, like knowing that once we radically accept, even if you try to take it back, you can keep accepting over and over again. So for me, when I'm in a place where I start to feel the shame come up, I can just say, can I accept that right now I don't know what I'm doing to make it all loud. I could say, can I accept that I am feeling this in this moment? And generally it's a yes, because there's no judgment and acceptance, and I think that's where people kind of get that wrong. You feel like if you say, I accept this, so it means it's good or it's bad. So we never place judgment on acceptance. It just is what it is, right? And then you can deal with the emotions and the logic, like in that 3 states of mind that I showed earlier with the slide, where you look at the logical side of things, the emotional side of things, and you pull those together and you really observe and you describe everything that's happening in you, and also just not holding on to thoughts, letting things just sort of go like the waves. It's in and out, and not clinging on to any ideas. It's really just about slowing down. Honestly, that is the thing that changed my entire life, when I learned to just stop. Did that answer at all? We can talk more about it if you want to.
I myself have very strong perfectionist tendencies, and when you're talking about when you don't reach that goal, you fall apart. I thought you're just talking about me for a second.
I'm talking about everybody for a second. We all are.
I understand it's just a process. So just letting go is just.
And you know what?
It's hard to just hold on.
It's also loving yourself. It's really about loving who you are first and foremost, because then you don't have to prove anything to anyone or even yourself at that point.
Kendall, where do you draw the line between what is perfectionism and trying to be too strict with yourself and making excuses and just saying, I fell off the wagon, it's cool, I do that every Wednesday?
Well, I think it's, I think there is a line, and I think you know that line within yourself. I think it's about checking in with your gut. That never steers you wrong. And so when you listen to that, not the voice up here that tries to analyze everything, but when you listen, really stop and you go, okay, I don't feel good about this. Like, I want to be better. I have this goal. Like, whether it's I want to wear that swimsuit or I want to be healthy or whatever that goal is. And I know these are the steps that lead to that, but I don't have to go be crazy about it and go overboard where I know I'm going to fail and fall off. I need to find the gray about that.
Okay, thank you so much, Kendall Kendrick. Thank you.